I love Halloween Ends. Let me tell you, when they called this thing Halloween Ends, they weren't kidding. It is great, and it's great to have another franchise bow out in such a resoundingly satisfying—
What is going on? What is going on?
What the fuck? Guys? Am I really gonna be on the other side of this again? Jeez. Look, I love Halloween 2018, like many of you probably do. I genuinely think that movie is incredible, and while Halloween Kills is pretty f***ing dumb, I have good enough fun with it. And I've even come around on its ambitions quite a bit, even if the film doesn't really know exactly what it wants to say in the way it wants to say it. It's a bit scattershot, and you know, look, this isn't a video on Halloween Kills, but you know what? It does have our Lord and Savior Jim Cummings in it, so I mean, that's good enough for the whole movie. I rewatched both of the David Gordon Green Halloween films before I stabbed my knife into Halloween Ends, and I came out of the final entry in the Halloween franchise feeling like David Gordon Green and Jamie Lee Curtis had successfully glued together a compelling trilogy of films about trauma that also served as thoroughly entertaining, fulfillingly violent entries in the canon of slasher films. And Halloween Ends, in particular, is magnificent. For my money, the best of the three, and was so good, in fact, it made me appreciate Halloween Kills more in retrospect. While I certainly get it's not a film for everyone, and it for sure asks a lot of the audience, I genuinely have trouble understanding all the vitriol, the hate, the disgust. I mean, it goes a little bit overboard, I think. And in turn, I find Halloween Ends to be a horribly misunderstood film. At least from what I've seen, the general blowback seems to be because it's not just Michael versus Laurie. The film unquestionably provides that, but not only that, and it contextualizes their antagonistic dynamic in an interesting way. That's what makes a movie like Halloween Ends refreshing. That's what makes it work. It's engaging with the previous two entries on a very deep level. It goes much further than just slasher v victim, and call me crazy, but I'm much more interested in the avenue this film takes over a climactic repeat of the previous 10 or so movies that have come before it. And before you think I'm being held hostage by Michael Myers or something, look, maybe it's just because I did a quadruple feature of Halloween 1978 all the way through the David Gordon Green trilogy, but I genuinely think there's a through line across these movies that not only comes together coherently, but is brought to a brilliant head in Halloween Ends. But look, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to lord my superior take over yours or anything. I'm just flexing that I am, in fact, a lord. Lord FilmSpeak, to be exact, thanks to my friends at Established Titles. Established Titles is a fun and novel way to preserve the natural woodlands of Scotland and assist in global reforestation efforts. It's centered around a Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lords and ladies. Established Titles Title Pack gives you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, and an official certificate with a crest. You'll get a plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land.
And remember, Griffin, hi, I'm Cade, I'm the editor. Established Titles partners with charities like One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to make sure that with every order, 1 tree gets planted.
You can officially change your name to Lord or Lady and be addressed as such on your credit card, your plane tickets, even your dating profiles. Why the fuck not? Hey, maybe Michael wants to come after a Lord or a Lady and hit you up for some Halloween festivities. Maybe you and Michael could get the couples pack, which come with adjoining plots of land. Established Titles is running a massive early Black Friday sale, and I know Black Friday seems a ways away, but I mean, look, it's almost Halloween. October's almost over, and November's coming up. The holiday season's coming up, and you're going to want to take advantage of this offer. Plus, if you use the code FilmSpeak, you get an additional 10% off. The first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be next to my plot within a few minutes walking distance, so we can go say hi, go trick-or-treating, and all that good stuff. And you want to be next to your good buddy FilmSpeak for all this. It's going to be great. Depending on how many of you want to become a lord or lady, we can even build our own little FilmSpeak kingdom and continue taking over the world or whatever. So go to establishedtitles.com/filmspeak to get your lord or lady ship now. And thank you so much to Established Titles for sponsoring this video. Okay. Right off the bat, Halloween Ends immediately gives you the message that this is going to be a completely different Halloween film, especially within this trilogy, beginning on Halloween 2019. Let's back it up a little bit. You know this movie's going to be different if you look at the font. The font is directly mirroring that of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And if you know what Halloween 3 is, you know that it was the odd film out in that original Halloween trilogy, an anthology film, the kind of thing that John Carpenter really wanted to do with the Halloween franchise, but, Michael Myers just kept bringing in the big bucks, and people just wanted to see that, and they didn't really like Season of the Witch all that much until, 20 or so years down the line, so that's probably what we're looking at for Halloween Ends. Anyways, David Gordon Green has made it abundantly clear that he is a massive fan of that film, and so he almost blends the anthology approach of that movie with that of the Michael Myers story in Halloween Ends, and I gotta say, it works beautifully. Michael Myers is just in the news, and his presence has caused Haddonfield to go into a fear-mongering frenzy, as we saw from Halloween Kills, and that has only gotten worse in the years that follow. And this little prologue might also throw viewers off guard because we're not following the Strodes, we're following a brand new character, Corey Cunningham. Now, Corey is here to babysit this little asshole kid named Jeremy.
He's a menace to the entire city!
Jeremy's mom tells Corey her son's been having nightmares, hearing voices and such. David Gordon Green is alluding to the fact that Jeremy may have been infected by evil, could potentially become the next Michael Myers. Boy, let me tell you, this kid is, he's a little demon. He's a little imp. He starts shit-talking Corey, just running around being a little fuck, pretending Michael has abducted him, that something has gone wrong, stealing knives and planting them, and then directing Corey into the attic before locking him in. Corey, being the protective babysitter, of course grabs a knife. He's trying to protect the kid, even though that we know this kid's just a manipulative little asshole. But right off the bat, this represents one of the core themes of the movie, which is that evil doesn't die. It just changes shape. It infects people, and Jeremy is clearly a victim of this infection that will later consume Corey. And all of this builds to this incredibly stressful, tense, unsettling, and downright jaw-dropping sequence where Corey kicks down the attic door while Jeremy is standing on the opposite side of it, taunting him, and it punts the little dickhead off the railing, making him fall to his death right as his parents come back home. It is shocking, to say the least. It's not how you think things are going to go, and that's very indicative of this movie. It's not going to go the way you think it is. Corey is automatically branded as a murderer, and this informs everyone's attitude towards him in the years that follow. They were looking for a boogeyman, and they made Corey the scapegoat because of what happened. The evil that infected Jeremy spreads to Corey in this opening, and the cycle continues as shown through the opening credit sequence and the pumpkins growing from inside a decaying pumpkin like the steadily looming threat of Michael. And it also ties into how the film is about the in-universe legacy, fear, and terror that Michael Myers has left on impressionable young minds through the media. It's about how evil breeds more evil, how Haddonfield is cursed by the cyclical effect of Michael Myers because he's been turned into such a boogeyman.
Michael Myers was pure evil.
As Laurie says.
He took our dreams and turned them into nightmares. As he was locked away in his prison, I disappeared into mine.
His brutality ravaged the community when they were forced to confront Michael, and now they're left searching for reason, for motive, searching for the next boogeyman. Haddonfield therefore became a place of grief and paranoia. The town turned in on itself, but Laurie didn't allow fear to control her life anymore. There would be no more hiding, no more living in fear. She's a survivor who's learned to cope with the trauma, to live with it, but not to let it control her. She adds,
"It's up to each of us, whether or not we lock the door and find our resolve, or let him inside."
Michael is representative of something more than an individual. He's a product of his environment, a symbol, a personification, and the movie says that, in a sense, Michael Myers can be anyone. It makes Halloween Ends as much an exploration of the legacy of Halloween as it is its conclusion. It does what so many other franchises don't, which is that most others end and leave the interrogation of their legacies to posterity. Halloween isn't content to do that. It demands a conversation before it exits and closes the door behind itself. It kind of does this through Laurie too. I love how in the 4 years since the events of Halloween Kills, Laurie has learned to put a lid on it, to live with her grief and trauma, but never forget it, because it'll always be there in some capacity. She's both the grizzled, frightened Laurie from Halloween 2018 at times, and a Laurie who's somewhat at peace. I love how Laurie looks out for the people in her community, the victims, her coming to Corey's aid as these teen bullies, which by the way, have to be the douchiest band kids I have ever seen in my entire life, but you know what, that fucking rules. I'd love to see it. It's all really nice. There's a general lack of compassion for people in Haddonfield, exemplified exemplified by the way Corey is treated by his mother or the way Allison is treated by her boss, and that establishes a really great dichotomy between these two characters as well. Laurie is really trying to fix Allison up with someone nice, trying to help her move forward with her life, whereas Corey's home life is very much dictated by his mother, like a Norman Bates sort of dynamic. She coddles him, babies him, no one can have him but her, something he takes with him into his relationship with Allison. He typifies a pattern of abusive parents, how a small-town mentality propagated by non-loving adult figures breeds more violence and passes it down to future generations, and how that spirals into the community. And this is especially true in relation to the bully that is targeting Corey. We see him reamed out, slapped upside the head. There is obviously physical and emotional abuse going on, and that abuse is then being transferred from the father to the bully to Corey. There's also a selfishness present in the residents of Haddonfield, one which makes it easy to just pass the buck along. Laurie is blamed for Michael's actions as if she tempted him, provoked him, when she should have let him go. They're so desperate to need someone to blame for the senseless violence. It's in line with the long history of society blaming victimized women because it's easy, instead of coming to terms with the real problem, a cultural issue. And the end consequence is a general lack of empathy, which also trickles down to Corey. Empathy is instead found largely in those who have directly contended with Michael. Hawkins and Laurie have this mutual admiration and understanding, and it's played a bit like a lost love, something very sweet and pure, and God, I just wish them all the happiness in the world. It's amazing. Go to fucking Japan, live your life, get the fuck out of Haddonfield. Laurie's empathy also extends to her writing her memoirs. She does it with the hope that it's going to help other victims. It gives them a voice. It lets them know they aren't alone and that someone else not only cares, but they're looking out for them. If society shuns someone, why would they go outside? They become a victim in their own right. Corey is a victim, looked at as a monster because he was framed for murder. The Strodes are the only people who saw Corey for who he was, who showed him compassion and empathy. And when Corey finally meets up with Michael in the sewer, Michael looks into Corey's eyes and you get the sense that he sees a bit of himself. Showed him mercy, the only time someone other than Laurie has. And when Corey does kill for the first time, it's not even because he snapped or anything like that. He did it to survive, but it was the first steps down a dark path. He killed a homeless man who was trying to use him as bait to get Michael's mask. It's a situation that only happened because of the elevated notoriety of Michael Myers, because of Michael Myers the boogeyman, much more than it was because of Michael Myers the murderer. And when you continue to push someone into a corner, when you repeatedly punch down, eventually they'll lash back. They'll become the monster you want them to be because you've been poking and prodding them. And that's why Corey is a great foil to Laurie. It makes a lot more sense to make him the focal point rather than Michael. It makes thematic sense when you come back to the main idea shaping the film, that evil doesn't die, it changes shape. He's used to divide Laurie and Allison, and also is this manifestation of all of Laurie's fears, that Michael Myers is so much more than one man and that the damage he has done extends far beyond him. Corey's allowing his environment to shape him instead of maintaining control of his life. This storyline is deep in conversation with Halloween Kills. Fear, Michael Myers, is traumatizing, controlling, poisoning, and dictating Haddonfield and Corey. Michael's ultimate plan: the more he kills, the more he transcends. We're not talking about a supernatural being here, we're talking about an idea, a personification of something. And so I think the best way to watch a film like Halloween Ends is to not look at Michael Myers as anything more than the movie monster. He's representative of something more. He's not a character, quote unquote. So by the time Corey feeds Officer Mulaney, who, fuck that guy, oh god, one of the most disgusting characters in the film. Really glad that he met his end. But anyways, he'd been harassing Corey, he'd been endlessly hitting on Allison to no avail, and so when Corey feeds him to Michael, it's actually an interesting choice to make Michael his guardian angel of sorts. Corey finds comfort, in a way, in the thing Haddonfield fears the most, while simultaneously shedding his own fear, which was brought on by the town in response to the thing that is now comforting him. They form a sort of symbiotic relationship that is evocative of John Carpenter's other iconic film, Christine. And this is where it might start to lose people, but God, I just thought this was so brilliant. This was great. This is a great way of hammering home exactly what David Gordon Green was after with these Halloween movies. Corey and Michael become one in the same way that Arnie and the Plymouth Fury become one. And this is something that the town brought upon itself. They pushed Corey down the path that led him here. Michael isn't the plague, the people and their mindset, their cyclical meanness is the plague. Michael Myers, the man, can be killed, but Michael Myers, the idea, the symbol, is a force of nature that lives on, in this instance, in Corey. And when Corey asks Allison, did she escape or did Michael let her live, Allison's answer is a third option. Her mother saved her. Corey's mother suffocated him, while Allison's mother showed her genuine love and compassion, something he wasn't afforded as a citizen of Haddonfield, as a son. It should show Corey that there is good in Haddonfield, but he's both too far gone thanks to the town's abuse and too starved for love and affection. Corey is never going to get the closure he deserves for what happened to Jeremy because Haddonfield is Haddonfield, a town plagued by evil. And the same could really be said about the people of Haddonfield. They're never going to come to terms with Michael Myers. It's why Haddonfield trivialized the pain of Jeremy's parents, took their despair and made it theirs as they lashed out, harassed, mocked, and abused Corey for what they think happened because they needed a boogeyman. Jeremy's mother lost herself in her need for answers, while his father knew Corey was a good kid and didn't deserve what the town did to him. He even wanted to go talk to him and tell him he didn't deserve the harassment, but when he looked in his eyes, Corey wasn't there anymore. It's tragic, but it also raises interesting questions. Did the town entirely do this to him, or was that darkness always there and it was just the harassment that turned it benign? In a meta sense, the film doesn't give one exact answer because, in reality, there isn't an exact answer for these kinds of things. It's a myriad of things, a culture and a community that cycles hate and evil. Again, for the people who were just expecting a finale centered entirely around the final showdown between Michael and Laurie, I realize that Halloween Ends represents basically a complete 180, and I even sympathize with how it might feel deeply unsatisfying. If you'd asked me before I saw the film what I wanted and expected out of it, I'd probably have had an identical answer to you. But when you look at Halloween Ends as a rumination on the in-universe impact and legacy of Michael Myers, of the wounds he left on the world around him, a movie about Halloween rather than a Halloween movie, I think it not only makes a lot more sense, but it's far more interesting and profound than a simple knife fight between hero and villain. And massive shout out to Rowan Campbell too for making Corey's storyline land through his performance. I think for anyone genre savvy, you can kind of tell where the story is going to go from the jump, but it just makes it more heartbreaking when he finally does break. And when he goes from tragically flawed character to a full-on villain, when he kills Allison's douchey doctor boss in a team up with Michael who simultaneously kills Allison's asshole co-worker, it's a transformation that feels earned. Corey is infected by evil. The movie clearly spells this out multiple times, from the opening credits to Corey's open hand wound that only heals the closer he gets to Michael, to Laurie's line to him.
You know, there are two kinds of evil. There's the evil that exists as an external force that threatens the well-being of the tribe. The other kind of evil lives inside us, like a sickness. It's more dangerous because we may not know we're infected.
Corey is infected. He has a bit of a self-realization that he needs to get away before things get worse. He's fighting against the monster inside himself, but gradually it wins until there's not really any Corey left. The infection takes over. Michael, symbolically, takes over, and he's too far gone to save. Corey and Allison ultimately feel like projects for Laurie to try and make up for what happened to Karen at the end of Halloween Kills, and really for Laurie's entire relationship with Karen across her life. Laurie wasn't a good mother, and we see her trying to do good on that with Allison. And again, for those of you who think that Laurie feels like a completely different character than the previous films, she still has that issue of overprotection, of control, of making people's decisions for them. It's just she's clearly gone to therapy, gotten some help, and has gotten better at a lot of this. Sadly, throughout the course of the film, we start to see her unravel a bit because of who Corey is, because of what he represents to Laurie. And she doesn't succeed with him because Corey is someone born from a community that lacks empathy. He had the cards stacked against him, a series of contributing factors that give way to evil, and you can't pin it all on one sole thing. Everyone wants a reason, a motive, an answer, a boogeyman. They don't understand that you just have to accept the unexplainable and move on with your life. Do what's best for you to heal, as Laurie has. This idea of living with trauma but moving on from it, in a meta sense, especially with how people are reacting to this film, Ends asks, what does getting exactly what you want, the exact answer you want, the solution you want, how does that solve anything? Does it just make you feel better? Oftentimes when you get the answer you're looking for, it's not as satisfying as you think it's going to be. And sometimes it comes at a cost. It won't solve anything. It just shifts the problem. You don't break the cycle. You have to be the one to make the choice, to choose an alternate path and not let what's come before define you. There will always be a Michael Myers. That's an immovable part of humanity's condition. What matters is how you deal with it. Do you let it define you, like Haddonfield has, or do you choose to not let it in, like Laurie? When it comes to Allison, people seem to think she's been dumbed down, and I get it to an extent, but I disagree. It's really just the evolution of the arc established in the 2018 film, and yeah, we got a 4-year gap, so we don't see the instant results of the fallout of her mother getting killed, but you can definitely tell that the damage has still been done. It's impacted her life in some capacity, both for better and for worse. In this film, she's clearly someone who takes after the best of her mother. She wants to help people, help make their lives better, hence why she's a nurse, and we see her trying to make Corey her project as well before falling for him. And I get why she falls for Corey too, because he's a victim just like her and Laurie. But sadly, he's just not given the same treatment as them because people think he's a murderer. Allison finally starts to have her own thing going. She's finally moving on from her trauma, and then Laurie comes back around in that typical 2018 Laurie fashion that we know her to be, and tries to control her decisions and take Corey away from her. And naturally, she rebels and points a finger at Laurie because she's an easy target. Everything kind of comes back around to her in some way, shape, or form, whether it's fair or not. What they went through was traumatizing, and Laurie was at the center of a lot of it. You can also take that as a bit of Allison maybe being in Haddonfield for a bit too long, and her subconsciously blaming Laurie because everyone else is. She's, in a way, on the verge of being consumed by the cult of Haddonfield, which is why she has to get the hell out. She needs to move away from the pain and have a good life. Corey offers her that, so it makes sense as to why she would be so drawn to him. And then, at the end, after they finally kill Michael, Allison does decide to leave Haddonfield and move on from all of that pain, that suffering, that trauma, the tragedy, the cycle of evil, and live her life. It just makes sense. It all works for me, and I know it doesn't work for a lot of people, but I really love what they do with Allison's character in this film. For as much as I really love Halloween Ends, its finale is where it truly becomes one of the best Halloween films ever. Corey fighting with Michael, grappling with the evil inside of him until he steals Michael's mask and fully becomes the evil, becomes Michael Myers reborn, is fantastic. The one kill with the blowtorch where we get the death of that douchey band nerd, oh my god, it was the best kill in the entire film. It was brutal. I loved it. And Corey trying to frame Laurie right before Allison walks in, the same trick that was pulled on him by Jeremy at the start, feels like an appropriate bookend for his character. Michael returning to kill him is just the cherry on top. I know a lot of people didn't like the way Corey's arc resolved, but I did. It's symbolic of the fact that Corey was literally consumed and then killed by evil in the end. The infection, Michael Myers. That's the resolution of his arc. I understand there were a lot of people who wanted more, wanted him to survive, wanted a more punctuated point to his death, but it's perfectly melancholic. Not too dissimilar to the death of Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight. Granted, both characters serving very different purposes, but still. It's abrupt, but incredibly effective. The unsatisfactory feeling you get when he dies is the point. It's the tragedy of someone who's been so deeply screwed by the system and turned into the person he was. I actually don't think I would have enjoyed having 100 minutes of some kind of back and forth between Laurie and Michael. We've seen it before. We've beaten that conflict into the ground countless times. Instead, we see the impact of their 40-plus year struggle through the eyes of an outsider, and Michael killing said outsider initiates the final showdown of the original characters without losing sight of the larger story at hand. And what a fucking showdown it is, man! It's great! Even if people don't like Halloween Ends, I don't see how you aren't all in on this final confrontation. It's so much more impactful because of everything we've gotten with Corey and Laurie. There's so much of this silent tension from the first film in this finale, and when the fight really kicks off, it makes for one of the best sequences in any Halloween film. The criticism that Michael Myers is relegated to a side character in his own movie makes no sense to me. The whole movie is dealing with the infection of Michael Myers. He's felt in every piece, every frame of the movie, even when he's not on screen. And people also genuinely seem to forget that Michael Myers has never been the main character of these Halloween movies. He's the movie monster. He's the shark in Jaws. The less you literally see of him, the more effective he is. And in this instance, you still get his kills and showdown with Laurie. Like any great movie monster, he's representative of something bigger, of a theme, of an idea. People who are just here for Michael Myers might not be happy, but I think they maybe don't understand what Halloween is really about. The build-up and payoff to this is so much more satisfying than if it was what the entire movie was about. Also, if I might remind people, Michael Myers had less than 10 minutes of screen time in the original Halloween. He had more screen time in Halloween Ends. What more do you want? And he was still an instant icon in that original film. Hell, if we're talking about screen time and movie monsters, Freddy had 7 in the original Nightmare, the shark from Jaws had about 4 in Jaws, and Jason, dare I say, had only mere seconds. Screen time does not equate to effectiveness. And when it all comes together, Halloween Ends works as a fulfilling end to Laurie's journey in this franchise. She's fighting the evil that's always stalked her. She finally confronts and kills her abuser. In her words, she's tried to forgive him, tried to kill him, tried to move on, and finally is able to truly defeat him. He's not the boogeyman after all. He's just a man. She can finally heal, and it's time for Haddonfield to start healing as well. Laurie's aware of this, and it's why she shows them Michael is dead, parades his body around to the people before, in the most satisfying kill in the movie, grinding him to oblivion. And I honestly commend this film for having the commitment to actually end the storyline. There are no more mysteries. Michael was killed for good and disposed of. A lesser final film would have come along like, hey, it's over, but you know, it's not really over. Now, this doesn't mean I never want to see a Halloween film ever again. It doesn't mean that they're never going to make more Halloween movies. They're definitely going to reboot it in about like 5 years or so. But what I think Halloween Ends does so effectively, and especially through the Corey storyline in particular, is that it actually proves that evil doesn't die. It changes shape. Laurie and hopefully Haddonfield have said goodbye to their boogeyman, and it's time to heal. But ultimately, as Laurie says,
fear moves through all of us, and we decide when to surrender.
And you know what? So do Halloween movies. And that's why Halloween Ends is one of the best, because it's unafraid of change, unwilling to burrow into the safety of repetition and stagnancy. David Gordon Green crafted a story about fear personified in 3 acts, and he knocked the final of those 3 acts out of the park. It just wasn't what people expected, and I guess maybe even not what they wanted, but it changed shape. But mark my words, similar to Halloween 3, give it some time, 15 years or so, maybe less, and the retrospectives will arrive, and the reappraisal of Halloween Ends and David Gordon Green's trilogy as a whole is going to be out in full force like Michael Myers after someone steals his mask.